personalization is a really big topic on most people's agenda at the moment. So I guess one of the questions might be, how important is data in that personalization? How do you try to drive the input of more personalized data? And maybe what impact is technology going to have on that over the next decade to help you drive that sort of highly personalized engagement with audiences that are going to help you meet your business goals?
Actually, to answer that question, but also to pick up on the point around the quality, I mean, the quality of the data is, I mean, we all know is hugely important, because, and actually, I always think the first challenge in the quality of the data is also the other point you were mentioning about, all the multiple sources of data. So if I was a CMO starting today, the first thing I'd be looking at is, where is my real single source of truth on any kind of data that I'm looking at? Particularly, I mean, certainly, we have multiple sources of who is the customer. So let's try and sort that out first, because I think until you can really all be operating from the single source of truth, right, sales and marketing, all the rest of the business, then actually anything you do is going to be somehow dysfunctional in terms of trying to serve the customer through their journey. And ultimately, what we're all trying to drive is a great customer experience at the touch point. And even to your point about the agents who are on the end of a phone line, ideally, they should be having a conversation with the customer. If we've spoken to them 10 times before, it shouldn't feel like the first time we've spoken to the customer, right? And certainly if it's on an individual level, that feels really bad. So I think the challenge really is to solve the kind of single source of truth, the quality of the data. So you need to put in investments, I think, around the governance and control of the data. That would be the first thing that I would want to say, I want to sort out. Then you need the data analytics and the data science guys to be working with that and driving some of the insights you can use. Then you can use those insights to drive everything from great messaging to great personalized experiences at the point of touch, to great content, and use it as a source of real learning for the whole organization.
I would agree that around governance. One of the things that we've certainly done in the last 5-6 years is really centralize the ownership of the data into a central group, and get away from those meetings where you all come to the table with your
own data.
Yes,
that's right.
So the answer also, by the way, is not to have it in a spreadsheet. So we have plenty of dashboards now, but everyone would come with a spreadsheet. You spend 55 minutes arguing which spreadsheet was right, and 5 minutes making decisions. Now we spend 5 minutes sort of getting the right view on the dashboard. Have you chosen those? And then you're away, and then you can make a decision, which comes on to my second point. As James was saying, we focus a lot on getting the data geeks, the nerds into the business to give us that understanding of, and that's the next thing for us, right? Our challenge is getting the people. We're competing with financial services, I mean, it's expensive talent, and it's really hard to find good data competent people who can get really deep on the modeling and all the things you need to do to get the right view of the data. Because the other thing is now access to data has been democratized for us. So it's easy for anyone to pull the data out. But if you're not competent in building out a statistically relevant model, then you're in dangerous territory. But a bit similar to that 5-55 kind of mix on the meetings. It's also there, more importantly, is another tier of analysts we need, someone who can interpret the data. And it's a bit like a bad PR campaign where you're trying to write a headline in the research you're doing. Often you're trying to write a headline in the data, and you need someone who's neutrally can look at that data and make the right interpretation, which may be uncomfortable in the understanding of that. And so that kind of insight is the thing now that we're focusing on, is people competent in driving those insights. We've been good at getting the data and the analysis. Now it's about the insights and kind of driving that conversation. And the biggest challenge for us is getting the talent to do that.
But also understanding the talent. A couple of years ago, all we wanted to hire was data scientists.
Yeah.
And we were at this kind of impasse where we thought that the data scientist role was to kind of come up with the questions or the hypothesis. And in fact, we're now starting to distinguish between a data scientist versus a data engineer versus a data analyst, and they're three quite distinct roles, but they're critical now. And if I think 5-10 years ago, they kind of weren't roles that we were thinking of in terms of marketing. I think one of the outcomes of better data and better insight is this degree of personalization that you talked about. But I do worry that personalization is being taken maybe to an extreme in a way. And I think we're in an environment now where we have fake news, where we have people believing that their Alexa device is listening into them and then you're being served at. So I think, personalization is good as long as it doesn't get too kind of creepy, right? So if you think about the watches we wear, it can kind of measure our heart rate. The music apps we have know when we're sad or happy and can kind of serve music up. And I think there has to be this kind of balance of personalization and trust, right? So those two things are kind of critical. Otherwise, you can be over-personalized, you can lose trust, that then it hits brand equity and loyalty and those kind of things. So I think we just need to be a little bit careful with that.
Sorry. Can I touch on, you'd asked the question about, does technology play a part of that? 100% technology plays a part of it. And a big part of it is technology should be simplifying. So we speak about having the data in the organisation, there's so much there, and the people to understand it and interpret it so it's not used the wrong way. But the technology has made it easy for us to be able to empower the teams, to be able to have the visual representation and be able to use the technology to make the decisions themselves. And so going back to my example that I used, if you've got a frontline staff, we should be enabling our teams across the organisation with that data and the right systems and tools that they can go into it themselves to see what's happening. If we take frontline staff as an example, if they can see call volumes being really high or they can see teams, why should they not have the ability to go in and see, well, what's causing it? Is it a certain time? Is it certain channels? Does it mean we're not staffed? And a frontline person can escalate that to their manager that escalates it to senior management. So it shouldn't always come from the internal boardrooms, and it should be coming from the frontline staff coming up, and the technology is the enabler for that.